Hello and welcome to another An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about the 1997 British romantic comedy Preaching to the Perverted, a film about lust, law and latex. So this is a romantic comedy where our star-crossed lovers are a dominatrix who owns a fetish club and who has an aversion to penetrative sex, and the male government agent who is pretending to be a customer while secretly trying to gather in for evidence that she is breaking the UK's decency laws. So very much, a star-crossed pairing who have to try and find a way to get together. So I'm going to talk about the movie in general and also why I think it doesn't quite work. Through the course of this video, I did want to, before I kind of got into the details, I did want to call out the supporting cast. Tom Bell, who plays the moral crusader who employs the male lead to infiltrate the fetish scene, is really good as his, pompous, overbearing, unpleasant moral crusader character. And Julie Graham, who plays the sort of right-hand woman to the dominatrix, turns in a really great performance as well. So there's some really good supporting performances here that I just wanted to kind of call out. So let's talk about the movie more specifically and some of the features that I thought were interesting. So first of all, I want to talk, I've called it standing out. So I'll preface this by saying, so like horror movies, the horror genre, romantic comedies tend to have some pretty defined tropes, plot beats, expectations. After you've seen a few of them, you can probably recognize those story beats. They meet, they have their initial attraction, and then misunderstandings and complications keep them apart until the movie ends. That's how romantic comedies and romance movies in general work. And the predictability of the form can make it tough to have your film stand out unless you have a hook, such as it's a fetish club dominatrix and the agent who's trying to catch her. Or Gross Point Blank, where it's one of them is a hitman. You've got to have that. What is it that makes it difficult for these people to get together? And that's a common, it's a problem that all romantic comedies and romances need to answer, because a story about a romance that doesn't actually have anything making it difficult is not going to be very tense or potentially engaging or interesting. So like my romance with my wife would not make for a good movie because we met, we liked one another, we got married, and we live happily ever after. Like there was nothing getting in our way. It wouldn't make for a particularly interesting piece of media. It was good to live through, mind you. But yeah, so this is, and so this film is choosing to stand out in this way. How do you, what is the thing? What is the hook that makes your romantic comedy interesting, unusual, different? And its hook is the specifics of the people involved. That's how it's trying to stand out. The second thing, obviously, that this movie is looking at, is non-vanilla sexuality, diverse sexuality, as I've put it here. So obviously, I can't comment on the movie's authenticity, its depiction of fetish clubs or of, the BDSM scene in general. I've not really ever been involved. But so I'm not commenting on whether it's authentic in its depiction of those things, any more than I could tell you whether a show like Queer as Folk or The L Word are authentic in their depictions of gay and lesbian society or gay and lesbian relationships and clubs and the like, because I've never been. I lack the equipment to go to a lesbian club for a start. Although this movie is about a cissexual, heterosexual couple, it's also about a couple who are, involved in the BDS scene, and it sits outside, mainstream vanilla sexual paradigm. And it was part of it's sort of at the start of a growing visibility of such films and shows. So Queer as Folk, and the L Word, which I've already mentioned, and Brokeback Mountain all came out sort of 1999 for Queer as Folk, 2000 for the US version, 2004 I think for the L Word, and 2005 for Brokeback Mountain. So this is a time when we are seeing romance dramas and romance comedies looking outside, general vanilla, everyday cissexual, heterosexual relationships. And so it's a feature of the movie. It's either going to be a selling point or an anti-selling point, a thing to drive you away from the movie, I guess. But it's it's part of that standing out thing. But it's a very specific kind of thing that I want to read. So it's very much. I mean, this is a 1997 movie about bondage clubs that comes from a country where in the 70s they had to get special permission to allow an unmarried man and woman to be shown sharing a bed, not doing anything, just the fact that they had only one bed in their apartment. 20 years earlier, they needed special permission to depict that on TV. So 20 years later, we've got this. So it shows that there was definitely a shift happening in the late 90s, early 2000s in this area. The last thing I want to talk about is plausibility, and more specifically, implausibility. So, I mean, to me, a romance or a romantic comedy hinges, the success or failure of that piece of media, whether it's a film or a book or whatever, hinges on whether it can put plausible and realistic and reasonable barriers in the way of the relationship, and B, resolve those barriers and and complications in a satisfying, convincing way, such that the couple that you want to see get together, and it feels like they've earned that, and they both deserve that. And I've seen this spectacularly poorly done in a number of pieces of media. It's not uncommon in romance novels to see the man essentially act in abusive ways to the woman because he's in pain, because he thinks she's betrayed him, even though of course she hasn't, and she forgives him when what she should actually be doing is suing him because he's acted in what is frankly a criminal manner, and maybe not criminal, but a completely reprehensible manner, certainly, and a manner that would open him to damages. This film doesn't do that, but it does fail to overcome the complications, and they're big complications. Hey, like she's a fetish club owner. She doesn't like penetrative sex. He's a man, and he's actually there to try and take her down. There's some big complications this film needs to overcome for this couple to get together. And it relies very heavily on contrivance to do it. The last 15 minutes of this movie, things happen because the writers need them to happen in order to have a happy ending. So it's not a very convincing transition from the relationship has fallen apart to the relationship is they recommit to the relationship. I mean, if you want to watch a romantic comedy about an agent pursuing a criminal / alleged criminal and them falling in love, like watch Debs instead, because it executes that whole kind of paradigm of the relationship hits a complication that causes them to break up, but then they recommit and get back together and live happily ever after. It just does it better than this movie does, which is a shame. I would have liked to see this. I always like to see a romantic comedy or a romance that delivers that successfully and convincingly, and unfortunately I felt this movie fell short on that front. So that's my thoughts on Preaching to the Perverted. It was interesting, but ultimately not quite successful in my eyes. Next time, I'm going to talk about something a bit different again. Assignment Outer Space, a 1960 science fiction film. From a time when we still had to advertise that we were in Technicolor. So I mean, it's an old movie. It's eligible for retirement. So we'll talk about that, what works, what doesn't, and whether I enjoyed it, and if there's anything interesting to say about it in a couple of days. In the meantime, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and catch you in the next one.